These top 10 VA rating myths are leaving you and your household undercompensated. So what we're going to do is we're going to tackle them in reverse order, building up to the very worst offender, and we're going to do that right now. I'm Jordan Anderson, VA Claims Academy. Let's get right into it. Number 10. Many people think that a VA rating is only for veterans who have recently separated. You've been out 20 years, 25, 30 years. Absolutely. You can go back, resurrect that cold case, and get the VA rating that you deserve, set the record straight, and absolutely that is possible. It's not just for people who have recently separated. Could it be a little bit more difficult the further you are removed from service? Sure, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for it. Number 9, I need a VA lawyer to file a VA claim. Well, absolutely not. You don't need a lawyer to file a VA disability claim because it has nothing to do with a courtroom or really even law, right? So the federal code of regulation is something that you can absolutely write towards yourself and get educated on without having to enlist the help of a lawyer. Even if you disagree with a VA rating decision, you still probably don't need a lawyer because there's ways to contest a rating decision before you get all the way up to appeals status, something I talk about very frequently on the channel. All in all, you want to stay out of the courtrooms and in the realm of a good, solid, optimal VA claim. Number 8, something I see quite a bit, which is using the VA healthcare system has an impact on my disability claim. This could go both ways. Number 1, a lot of veterans think that if they are getting treatment for their conditions, maybe even that they're service-connected for, they're afraid that the doctors are going to write, hey, they're getting treated, they're getting better, we're seeing marked improvement, and that they would be at risk for a decrease. Well, that's not so much true. Actually, getting treated is a very good thing in maintaining your VA rating. I can get into that deeper in another video. But the opposite is true. I see a lot of veterans who say they got diagnosed with sleep apnea by the VA after service. They've got prescribed a CPAP machine by the VA, and they think that the VA is admitting that that was service-connected. That's not true. Just because they diagnose you with a condition, they admit that you have a condition, the VA is not saying that it's service-connected. So you need to keep those two things completely separate in your mind to not assume something that would be a false expectation. In at number 7, only physical injuries count for VA ratings. It's kind of actually the opposite is true. The highest rating that is awarded on average is a mental condition, in at 70% just for that condition alone. But you'll see a lot of veterans and our peers will say, hey, you're walking just fine. How did you get a 70% rating? How did you get a 100% rating? I see you walking or jumping just fine. Well, it turns out that physical ailments are much too focused upon by most veterans because typically you're getting a 0%, you're getting maybe a 10%, or a little bit higher, but the mental side, maybe the respiratory side, these kind of more invisible conditions can actually be the most substantial. Number 6 is sort of piggybacking off of number 7, and that is severe conditions guarantee high ratings. It can be the case that your left knee is really bugging you and it's super severe, you're just writhing in agony 24/7. But if the VA, during the day of your CNP exam, determined that your range of motion is okay, they're giving you 0% for it, or maybe 10% for it, for painful motion perhaps. That's just how it is. You can't have a severe condition in your mind, but then not translate that into being severe in the language of the VA. That is one of the most common ways that people get underrated and most common way to lead to frustration with the VA. Here we are in the top 5. We're going to spend a little bit more time on these because they impact you just a bit more than the others. Number 5 is that the VA will try to deny or decrease or lower your ratings over time. That's not necessarily the case, especially if you are strategic with how you build your VA rating profile, in that you're going for the high value claims, right? The high value conditions that you do suffer from, and that you're honest with yourself in terms of, hey, my back is messed up. The back is something that's not looked at as getting better with age. A lot of these conditions could be static, or if you're going and getting treated for your mental conditions, you're diagnosed with a disorder, right? Major depressive disorder, things like this. A disorder indicates mostly that, again, you're not getting better with time. A lot of well-filed VA claims are actually having a lot of static conditions where you can maintain that rating, for instance, 100% permanent and total rating all the way through to the end of your life. Again, getting a raise actually every single year, well, at least nominally. You would get a raise with the cost of living allowance every single year rather than getting a decrease. So don't be afraid that you're going to get decreased all the time. It's good to maintain a defensive posture in terms of getting treated for your conditions. You should be doing that anyway, but it's not something to be totally vigilant and afraid of, that the VA is going to come out and try to decrease you all the time. Number 4 is, I'm afraid that I won't be able to work if I receive a high rating. What do? I can't work. I'm also going to get into, what if I'm a pilot and I have this FAA that I need to stay compliant with, or I am a fan of the Second Amendment. Of course, will my Second Amendment get taken away if I get a high mental rating, for instance? These things can be sort of easily addressed. Most of the time, if you get a high VA disability rating, unless you are specifically applying for what's called TDIU, which is Total Disability Individual Unemployability. It's a whole separate deal. But if you're just going for a high VA rating, you can absolutely work. You can earn as much as you want. This is not like Social Security. It's not like, again, TDIU, where there are limitations on your income put in place. That part is completely fine. What about if you are a pilot, for example? I have a lot of pilots that come through in our clients, and they're always cognizant of the FAA. Then yes, absolutely. I would stay away from, maybe if you don't want to do mental conditions, I understand, and other conditions that the FAA would go ahead and yank your flight status for. That part is absolutely real, and you need to stay up to date with that. The final part, the Second Amendment, right? So hey, I don't want to lose my, pew-pew. If I have a 70% mental rating, I'll say that I can't speak for your specific state, but I can't read anything as far as the Second Amendment being taken away because you have a 70% anxiety rating. I just don't think that's the case. I don't think many people get that taken away. Now, if you have an active plan to harm yourself or others, okay, at that point, maybe others are involved, but otherwise, you should absolutely be fine. We're in the top 3 now. Number 3, PTSD is only for combat veterans. That is not the case. I spoke to a gentleman this morning who just felt he would break down every time he would speak about his mental condition because he felt so ashamed that it occurred during peacetime. And that was years and years and years and decades ago. Got chills. That's not the case. A lot of times the most grotesque traumatic events that I've heard of have occurred outside of combat, and even from fellow service members. So it's absolutely not just for Lieutenant Dan type, you're Saving Private Ryan, all the PTSD things that we think about, that we see in the movies. These mental conditions, even outside of PTSD, I'm talking about anxiety, depression, adjustment disorder, can absolutely happen during peacetime, and it's not something to be ashamed of. Number 2, you actually may be surprised at this myth, but number 2 is the misconception that higher ratings are difficult to get. It's actually not. Again, we're in America, right? We have a mental health issues are very common. So we think about this common condition. That alone is rated on average 70%. So that fact entirely just is proof that getting a high rating is not really difficult. It's just a matter of translating your truth into the VA's language. So what is difficult, again, is when you focus too much on your physical ailments, or you focus on telling the VA the things that they're not trying to hear. That's when you lead to that frustration. But getting a high rating in the VA is actually not as difficult as people think. And that brings us in to number 1. A lot of you may disagree with this one. This is, how many conditions should I file at once? Hey, I have 10 conditions. Should I file them all at once, or should I piecemeal them out? I'm going to file 4 right now, and then 6 months later I'm going to file another 4, and then I'm going to file the last 2. I believe that you should file all your conditions at once. Could it potentially make your one claim take longer? Yes. Internally, the VA may delay your claim a little bit because they have more conditions, especially if there's something missing on one condition. One condition can delay your entire decision. However, if you're piecemealing things out to where it's 4 months for this claim, 6 months for that claim, another 4 months for this claim, It takes longer, it's mentally exhausting, and I don't think you're saving anybody any time or resources by purposely holding back conditions to not claim them. In my opinion, file everything all at once, be organized, make sure the claim is fully developed, and that is the best way to save yourself time and do the VA a favor, because you're making it easy for them to rate you favorably. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.